kind of share some ideas with you that you may or may not already know about these retroreflectivity levels in the MUTCD. Hopefully, your agency is thinking about, how do I be in compliance with these? And I'll go over the compliance period, but we're about halfway into it. So my understanding with the agencies that I work with is that they're still trying to figure out the best processes, the best technologies to be in compliance with this new federal rule, but also do more with less. And that's what today's presentation is all about. So I'm going to set the stage here with some things that, again, I think everybody should know. And then I'm going to have a couple technology solutions talk about what they could bring to the table to help agencies be in compliance, not only be in compliance, but to make more effective pavement marking decisions and maybe do that with less than what they're doing it today with. So my opening page here, this is the Federal Register. This is when the minimum pavement marking retroreflectivity levels were published. They were published as revision 3 to the 2009 MUTCD, which is still the active MUTCD. We are expecting, and I'm hearing very strong expectations that we will see the new MUTCD before TRB and most likely before the end of December. So get ready for a 1,000-page review when it lands. So this is just setting the stage here for a second. I am going to go to the next slide. If I can. Ray, I am having trouble advancing slides. Let me.
Okay, there you go.
There we go. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to figure out with those folks that are on. Okay, there we go. So the question here, and this is a question that I'd like for all the respondents to respond to, a polling question will come up. Do you think your agency is already in compliance with these MUTCD minimum retroreflectivity levels? And go ahead and select your answer, yes, no, not 100% sure. And we will see kind of live feedback as we go here. And it looks like what we're seeing so far is about half the folks aren't sure that their agency is in compliance. About a third are, and then the remaining aren't so sure, probably not. Super good feedback, because that basically means most of you are probably super interested in what we have to share today. I will say the turnout for the webinar has been excellent. We've got 45 out of the 50 states online. We've got territories online and smaller jurisdictions on the call as well. So we have had a great turnout for this presentation, and thank you all for joining. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Appreciate you answering the question. We're going to have a series of questions like that throughout this webinar. Okay. So this is just a little background information. I thought it was interesting. If you don't know this, it was back in 1993 when Congress told FHWA that they needed to develop minimum retroreflectivity levels. They published the final rule for signs in 2007 and the final rule for pavement markings in 2022. So this was not an easy chore. Obviously, took many, many years, lots of research, and lots of dialogue with agencies to figure out the most appropriate way to meet the congressional requirement. Okay. Now I'm showing you just what is in the MUTCD, and I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole on this, but what you need to know is the minimum retroreflectivity for white or yellow under dry conditions is 50 millicandelas for most roads. That's the standard. Now the guidance is, as you can see directly below in paragraph 2, 100 millicandelas, depending on the speed of the roadway. Now that's a guidance statement. The standard, though, is 50. So there's two levels, 50 and 100, essentially, depending on how your agency interprets guidance in the manual. Again, I'm not going to get into a lot of details because there's some bigger fish I want to fry here, and I'm assuming most people are familiar with this. Now, this is another interesting piece of information. So revision 3, shown to the left of the slide, says you have 4 years from the effective date of this revision to be in compliance. The effective date was September 6th, 2022. So essentially, by September 5th, 2026, your agency is either in compliance with these minimum retroreflectivity levels, or every ambulance chaser lawyer is going to be buying retroreflectometers, suing and causing, great havoc through tort liability possibilities. That's the fear. We'll have to see if that comes true or not. Now, FHWA has provided a report, and in the report, they talk about 5 different ways agencies can be in compliance, and a lot of them you don't have to measure retro. One of the methods is measuring retro. There's 2 methods that require nighttime visual inspections, and then there's 2 service life methods, and then there's other methods if an agency decides, I've got a great new technology and that's what I'm going to do to maintain retro. FHWA just wanted to kind of leave flexibility. If you do decide to use that other methods category, you've got to document that with an engineering study. That's the catch to that. So I'm going to go to another poll question, and maybe your agency hasn't done any of this yet. Maybe they have, but I'd like you guys to respond to what methods your agency uses to assess pavement marking retroreflectivity. And Ray, can you pull that polling question up for us?
Yeah, just bear with me.
Yep.
There we go.
Okay, super. So I kind of grouped some of these, and there's obviously 2 nighttime visual inspection methods and 2 service life methods. Wasn't really sure. I didn't really feel like for this webinar we needed to get that level of detail. But this is very interesting. So it looks like combination of methods seems to be the highest response, and I'm assuming that's probably inspections and measurements, but don't really know. Measurements is pretty high on the list with 1/3 of the responses, and you can see the rest of them. So I'm happy to see that only 5% of the agencies are using nighttime visual inspections, because I'm about to burst your bubble if you're using nighttime visual inspections. So that's really good stuff. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing that. All right, let's move on. Okay, so what's included and what's not included? I think the most important thing you need to know with the MUTCD minimum retroreflectivity levels, the 50 and the 100, are those are based on visibility needs of a 62-year-old driver. It has nothing to do with improving safety. The 50 and the 100 are based on providing a 62-year-old driver who drives at night 2.2 seconds of pavement marking preview time. That's where the numbers were derived from. Again, I did all of the research there, and I think it's very important that everybody knows that those levels are based on visibility and not safety. They apply only to longitudinal markings. White and yellow have the same minimum levels. So if you're an agency that's going to use the 50, then it's 50 for white and 50 for yellow. The retroreflectivity levels only apply during dry nighttime conditions. There are no minimum retroreflectivity levels for wet conditions established by federal highway. There's also no relief, even if you decide to use raised retroreflective pavement markers or RRPMs. But if you have continuous roadway lighting, there is a relief to the retroreflectivity levels. So for city agencies or for state agencies that have continuous roadway lighting on urban freeways or on urban arterials, you would be able to bypass the minimum retros. Now, as I said before, measurements of retroreflectivity are not needed to be in compliance, but I'm going to describe to you, I hope in a couple of slides here, why I think it's the best way to manage it. There has been, by federal highway, with these minimum retroreflectivity levels, no consideration for what ADAS or ADS technologies need. And those are the technologies that drive automated vehicles. And finally, FHWA estimates a national economic impact of about $28 million per year. That includes every state and every agency that has to be in compliance. So their estimate was significantly modest, and may be accurate. I'm not here to argue that. So what I am here to try to get people to understand, though, is that pavement marking retroreflectivity levels, if you want to drive and improve your nighttime safety, are much different than what's in the MUTCD. And this is some work that goes back a number of years, but we were working with the states of Michigan and the state of North Carolina because they've been collecting retroreflectivity data statewide for at least 10, if not 15 years. So they have lots and lots of retroreflectivity data across their entire states, and they were able to share with us their crashes for the same periods. And we were able to obviously filter it. So it's only nighttime crashes, and it's only crashes that involve vehicles leaving the roadway. And I still can't guarantee that was just based on retro. It might have been a sleepy driver, or a distracted driver, fatigue, I don't know. But we did our best to narrow down the types of crashes that would be impacted by retroreflectivity. And what we were able to discover with statistics and is that it's not just the maintained level of retroreflectivity that your agency chooses, but it's also the initial quality of that pavement marking as it goes down that's just as important. So you've got to make sure that you're using the right material, the contractor is putting the product down properly, and then you have to start thinking about, okay, what are my maintenance levels? And you can see here, this is sort of just a couple examples. If you want to try to improve retroreflectivity at sort of nighttime crashes at a modest rate, you would specify 350 for white and 225 for yellow initially installed, and then 175 would be your minimum. If you were really interested in driving safety, you could bump those numbers up. And in this paper, there's a model that you can use to select different retroreflectivity levels to see what impact that would have on your nighttime crash rate. So I think it's important that everybody understands that there's the minimums in the MUTCD are not based on safety. Numbers like these are based on empirically driven safety data. So, to me, this is even if you already know that you're meeting the minimums in the MUTCD, which are very low, by the way, and you think, hey, I want to do something that actually impacts safety, this is a great paper for you to pick up and take a look at. And I've got all of the references here. So I'm going to go to question number 3. Does your agency set minimum retroreflectivity levels above the MUTCD levels? The results are coming in, and it clearly looks like most agencies are setting retro levels above what's in the MUTCD, and I'm happy to learn that. Thank you. All right, I'm just going to move on for time's sake. Here's the other thing I really want everybody on the call to understand. As soon as I get this polling question off my screen. Okay, so we already recognize that not many of you are using visual inspections, but I do know agencies that rely on visual inspections. And what I did here was I took data from 3 different studies where we had all of the nighttime inspectors went through training as per the FHWA guidelines. And then we went out and said, okay, now tell us what you think of, tell us if you think this section passes, yes or no. And their answers were yes or no, it passes or it doesn't. And so what you see here is a very interesting curve that tells me if the line is below 50, it's pretty dead. I mean, there's not a lot of retro left. And trained visual inspectors are pretty good at determining when the line is dead. They're also really good at determining when the line is adequately bright. But between 50 and about 175, the guess, you might as well flip a coin, because nighttime visual inspection only leads to about a 50% success rate. So if you're an agency just doing visual inspections, even if you train the inspectors, they're going to have a really hard time judging a line, whether it's adequate or not, if it's between 50 and 175. And you could look at this data and slice those numbers slightly differently, but that's a pretty good range, I would say, where visual inspections are not very reliable. And unfortunately, that's the minimum levels in the MUTCD. So when I'm helping agencies try to figure this out, I try to steer them away from visual inspections for this reason. So let me just summarize what I've shared, and I'll pass it off to another speaker. So minimum retroreflectivity in the MUTCD is based on visibility. If you want to think about minimum retro for safety, it's different than what's in the MUTCD. As we just learned, and I already knew, most agencies set minimum levels higher than the MUTCD levels. We just learned nighttime visual inspections are not very reliable. And we didn't really go over this in a lot of detail, but my experience is if you want to have a good pavement marking retroreflectivity program, it starts with you taking responsibility and having the appropriate specifications, the appropriate materials for the type of road or the type of area you're in. And then quality of application of those materials is just as important. And then measuring your retroreflectivity. You can't manage it without measuring it. It's just like our jobs. We all have KPIs. They're measured to see how well we perform. You have to measure in order to manage. There are technologies out there that I'm not sure everybody is familiar with that I think can help agencies do more with less and still meet the requirements of whether it's MUTCD or your agency's requirements. And that's what the rest of this presentation will really feature. And so I'm going to stop here. I'm going to turn it over to a colleague of mine, Rob, to switch gears a little bit and start talking about some of these technologies that I think you'll find very interesting if you're not already aware of them. Thank you. Oh, and then quickly, yeah, so the slides will be shared. The resources that I used for my slides were on that last slide there, if you wanted to dig in deeper, or just send me a note.
Paul, thank you. Appreciate your opening remarks and presentation. As Paul mentioned, my name is Rob Oram. I'm Vice President of Business Development with Skipline. So good afternoon and good morning, depending upon your location. My portion of the discussion this afternoon is going to focus on pavement marking, data management, or in layman's terms, data logging. So as Paul mentioned a couple times during his presentation, in order to achieve quality retro numbers, meeting those standards that we want for safety purposes, it really comes down to an initial application of high quality markings. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today and how those processes can be measured and managed for the benefit of your agencies. So a few topics that we're going to cover during the discussion. First of all, what is data logging? What is the technology? How does it work? Furthermore, benefits to agencies, both internally and externally to the DOTs. And some of the, busting some of the myths that tend to exist out there around this technology that's really available for your purposes. So to start from the top, what is data logging? And simply data logging, a data logger is an onboard computerized hardware and software system. And it's used for managing and reporting application data. So a couple key things here. It's an onboard system. So it's on the equipment when the application is being done. What it enables is it provides visibility to the operators that are doing the work at the time of application. It also captures the information, makes it available from a reporting perspective to key stakeholders, either internally or externally, and really enables you to manage all the vast information that's going on from the trucks that are being captured. So it typically consists of data logger hardware. It's kind of that magic black box, the computer that's capturing all this information from various sensors and so on the truck. Material monitoring sensors. In the large picture of data logging, there's a few different components of information that we're going to be capturing as the material is being put down. One of those is material, and we'll talk a little bit about those different methodologies and sensors for that. We're also looking at bead scales, measuring not only the material, and we'll use the term paint generically, but the paint that's being utilized, but also the beads. The volume of beads, the proportion of beads is key. That's where you're getting the reflectivity of the markings for the visibility of the driving public. So we want to make sure that we're measuring that. Through a data logging system, what we're doing is we're utilizing load cells, and we're actually weighing the differential weight of the beads. And then we're calculating that into a use based upon bead scales and so on, which work with the data logging system hand in hand. In addition to that, a data logging system is going to have some environmental controls with it, and more monitors than controls. But what we're doing is we want to tell the complete picture. So a data logging system typically has an environmental sensor where an agency or an operator can capture, what are the road temperatures? What's the ambient air temperature? Things like humidity and dew point. All very important metrics when we're looking at making sure that the materials were put down in the right instances to specification based upon what those manufacturers recommend. A final piece of kind of that data logging system puzzle is GPS. So we know when the application is being done, at what time it's being done, and what location to really help paint that entire picture. So the end result of a data logging system is it really tells the story. Where did I work? When did I perform that work? What was applied during my painting application? What were the conditions when I was out there? And also, what were those materials applied to the specification that was set forth? All key components in the data logging picture. So the first question is for the departments of transportation that are on the call right now that currently manage their pavement marking maintenance in-house. In other words, your crews are going out there doing this work. Of those, are you utilizing material monitoring and data logging technologies currently on your equipment? So we see some results coming in, some aren't sure. But about 40% of the group that are doing their own work have this type of technology, utilizing it. And that's really positive. That's great to see, because there's so much valuable information, as we'll speak to, again, both internally and externally, for the departments to use that information. So if you're not sure, as we continue the discussion, probably introduce you to some additional areas of opportunity for your departments moving forward. So appreciate the feedback on that. So how does it work? The way that the data logging system works is our equipment is merging sensor and counter inputs into painting data. So the components on the truck, anything from a switch box, which is typically located at the back of a paint truck, where operators are literally turning on and off switches, putting paint on the ground, introducing beads to the operation, presetting patterns, both in terms of colors and patterns and so on. We're able to capture all that information, including gun footages, distances, and so on, and use that information for our purposes. Paint usage, how much material is going through the system, and furthermore, how are we applying it through these systems, and understanding the direction and speed of which the truck is moving, the width of application that line is being put down, and actually the material use that's being used within the truck. We can then understand how thick that material is. In doing so, we've got a real-time visualization of, are we meeting our specification? Are there adjustments that we need to make? In addition, we're again looking at bead usage, calculating that information through the system, and then the other aspects of environmental conditions and GPS positioning. The other pieces that are part of this are, what's the job name? Job naming schemes that are set forth either internally by agencies or by contractors, and maybe some pertinent information like what was the batch of beads or the batch of paint that I used. All valuable information for tracking that data moving forward. In whole, all this information is available and segmented into short intervals. So what we can do is, through this information, we can extract reports which start from the truck, go to the cloud, and then to a software platform, and then pull those reports to understand across this job, how did this job perform across this segment? What is the important information to me in terms of, again, application, material use, and so on. So it really, again, tells that entire picture. Going back to a couple of the components, material use, some different ways to do it, and the cost of some of these components varies, and they're going to be dependent upon material types. The example in the upper right corner here is called a cherry pump stroke sensor. And in that instance, we're literally counting pump strokes, equating that to a volume of material, and making calculations. Another example is a flow meter, where on low pressure paint trucks, we're actually monitoring the flow of material through that system and doing those calculations. Again, all of these different pieces of information being captured as the application is going on. One of the keys for everyone to recognize is calibration is the key to information accuracy. So we recommend, at a minimum, annual distance and material calculations. What we're doing in that instance is distance calibrations are typically charted out over a 1,000-foot marked course. We want to make sure that our system recognizes that 1,000 feet as exactly 1,000 feet. Thereafter, when we're going out there painting, we can make calculations and understand the exact results of the painting operation. In addition, calibrating our pumps, calibrating our flow meters, making sure that we have the right information, and in the situation with any pumps and so on, recommending that if changes are made, if they're repacked or rebuilt, that we redo those calculations or those calibrations accordingly. So what type of benefits would data logging equipment or data logging systems have to an agency? We work with a number of agencies, with our OEM partners who are the actual truck builders, and with, again, agencies and contractors that are all embracing the use of data logging systems. So what type of benefits might it have to departments of transportation like yourselves? First of all, internally, for those organizations that identified that they're doing their current, maintaining their current markings program, it tells the story of the work. It really helps organize that entire maintenance program. Where did my crews work over the course of the past year or other timeframes? What was accomplished? What were the costs associated with that? The agencies can also benefit from the information to assist in budget management. You know, not only labor, but material costs are significant, and budgets are finite. There's only so many resources to go around. So using the information that's available to us and helping manage our programs moving forward, we can do that from a budget perspective. In addition, prioritization planning. When we know things like, when was the last time that this area was painted? What's the performance of these particular markings? Then as agencies, you can start utilizing this information and prioritizing, where do we need to put the resources? Are there places that we need to prioritize for remarking and so on based upon performance? Are there places that are performing well where perhaps we don't have to allocate those dollars and resources right now? So a lot of valuable information internally for agencies. The way that we can visualize this is agencies utilizing these data logging systems for their own purposes. They can have live fleet tracking. Where are my trucks located and what type of work are they performing in the field? Visualization of completed work. The system maps out all of the work that was done over a given time frame as selected by the user. This system can be queried where we can go through specific time frames, specific pieces of equipment, or specific jobs, and we could actually compare and contrast year over year for similar jobs to take a look at efficiencies and budget spend and those types of things. So really the ability to visualize that work. We can go deeper into this information and look at job-specific data. This is an example of one of the jobs that was on the previous page, where I can go in and understand when was the job done, how long did it take me to do it, what were the materials that were utilized in that, what were the results from an application perspective, what were my environmental conditions, and so on. So a lot of valuable data captured and available to you. Environmental conditions, confirming whether, you know, all these applications, was the paint that put down in the proper conditions, were the temperatures right, and so on, to make sure that we get the most durable and high performing markings. So a lot of valuable insights and benefits internally. When we spin that a little bit and look to how as an agency could we benefit externally from these data logging systems. Many states at this point, I think it's between 8 to 10 have full spec data logging requirements in place. There are many more that are in the process of examining these as specifications to utilize with their contractors. What it provides for the agencies is a virtual inspection tool. Getting the information that comes directly from the equipment at the time that it's applied, having the ability to visualize and view that reporting data provides virtual inspection. You can always go and take a look at areas of need and perhaps go out into the field. The biggest challenge that we've seen is limited resources and labor in terms of having those inspectors available. Additional benefits, confirmation that your contractors are meeting specifications. You know, comparing the data that comes in to what was laid out in the specification for this particular job, a very quick report and visual in terms of, are these things being met? It also enables agencies to understand you're going to get what you paid for. Putting performance requirements in place, validating and confirming that that was carried through by your contractors, and having that information available to you.
Rob, just a flag, we got 2 minutes on this.
Okay, and I'll move quickly on this. Some reporting, we've got customized, the information really from an agency standpoint is what information do you want to see and how do you want to see it? These are just some examples of templates that were provided by the DOTs for how the information is visualized. And those specific reports can be shared in a secure environment with the DOTs for reporting. A quick poll question, and I'll wrap up with busting the myths. In your opinion, what describes your position with current data logging? Is it something that's being required? You don't have any current requirements and don't expect to implement there, or you're somewhere in the midst of examining that? And I see the numbers coming in right now, and it looks like the vast majority are somewhere in the process, which is typical of what we see. Just a couple quick things, Ray, that I'll finalize here. So busting the myths. The first thing being is without data logging, my crew has the answers. The fact of the matter is it's just not true. Even the most experienced crew cannot see the difference between a 15 and a 16.5 mil painted line. It's something that we kind of go through an exercise with. The reality is that's a difference of 10%. If you're 10% under, you may not be meeting the specifications for performance of markings. If you're 10% over and putting $1 million worth of material through that truck in a given year, you've got significant material waste, and you're probably leaving about $100,000 material on the road that doesn't need to be there. The second myth is data logging is too expensive and too difficult. Data logging systems can be installed on both new and retrofit equipment, regardless of truck manufacturers. It's done all the time, and the return on investment of these systems is typically recognized within a fraction of the first year. Just the ability to manage that information. The final piece of this is that the data is suspect and can be manipulated. The truth is, DLS systems use very few manual entry fields. Most of the information, the vast majority, is collected by the system, securely sent to the cloud, and then extracted by the agency or by the stakeholder based upon what they want. So to summarize and turn it over to Joe, it's a powerful tool, both internally and externally for DOTs. It enables data-driven decision-making to manage your systems, and they represent really only a fraction of the overall truck costs, and they can recognize rapid return on investment for your agency. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, who's going to speak to the reflectivity side of the discussion.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you very much. First of all, everybody, and Paul, thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this forum today. And thank you, everybody, all the participants who have joined and staying with us. My name is Joe Turley. I'm the president and co-founder of RetroTek USA Incorporated. We basically manufacture retroflectometers to measure pavement markings. And what's different about our system is it's the first in the world that's fitted to the front of a vehicle and measures all markings on the lane traveled at traffic speed day or night. So it's basically one pass, all the markings within that lane. So now to move on. So, okay, Paul, I think I'm having the same problem as you might have had. Yeah, here we go.
There can be a little delay.
Oh, okay, all right. So anyway, we're aware of the future, down the line, future staff resourcing issues, and also deadline and priority to get information efficiently and safely to government agencies to help them work. Well, I'm hoping you get two takeaways from today's presentation, but from my presentation anyhow, is that basically we have a new technology to help you efficiently, safely, and accurately get the information you need to help you with MUTC compliance, but also other issues as well. The second main key will help your MUTCTs and agencies understand lots of other issues, the key benefits there from doing an annual retroreflectivity survey. It's not just about retro, there's lots of other things there, and I'll explain them now in the next slide or two. So just a quick history lesson on retroflectometer systems. We consider there's 3 generations of systems out there. First generation will be handheld probably most of you are familiar with those on the left there. Then you've got the side-mounted systems that are fixed to the side of a vehicle and measure one line road marking at a time. And we would consider ourselves the third generation that is fitted to the front of a vehicle, fitted to a standard tow bar in the front of a vehicle, and measures at traffic speeds at all the markings on the lane you travel on. So let's move on again. And so the key reasons for paving marking assessments would be, well, obviously MUTCD requirements is a legal requirement down the line, but it's not just about that. It's avoiding lawsuits. If there's accidents on your roads and they're claiming the road markings are at fault, you have the evidence. If you've done a survey, you have the evidence, you have the results, and you have the video to prove that your roads are compliant. Or you can go out and do a survey quickly and check the road. So you can kill lawsuits before they even start. Safety, well, you know, if you're measuring your roads, you're going to improve your road safety, but you're making it safer for everybody, but you're also making it safe for your road workers. You're keeping them off the road, so no boots on the ground, no work zones. The budgets, well, if you're measuring road markings, you can see what's happening and you can start prioritizing where you need to spend your money. And that is always in the public interest and makes more sense. Quality control as well. As you do surveys, you will identify where you need to spend your money, what road networks need to be repaired, what lines need to be repaired. So overall, you bring your standard of roads up. Again, that's also good in the public's interest. And the other thing you do is, some people don't even think of this, is when you're doing surveys, you're actually building an accurate inventory of all your pavement markings. Everything that's on the ground, you're going to see inline safety mark, critical safety marking, stop lines, crosswalks, but also you're going to have a video. And that video actually not just shows you your markings, it shows you all your signage that's within that video stream as well. So you get a lot more action, a lot more information, and you can also see at times damage to the roads as well. Now, we don't measure that, but it's in the video. The other thing is compliance. If you're issuing contracts, warranty contracts to striping contractors, you want to make sure they're doing their job before you pay them. And likewise, a striping contractor wants to get paid quickly. So if they measure the roads with an MRU, a mobile retroflectometer unit, they can prove to you they've done the job correctly and they can get paid quickly. And Paul alluded to, or he mentioned that ADAS systems. Nearly every vehicle that comes out has lane departure warning and lane keep assistance in them. And those systems are operated using a small camera facing outwards towards the road. And that detects the road markings in the same method as we detect our road markings using cameras, which is machine vision. So again, there's a little message at the bottom. It could be kind of, it's our mantra, you cannot manage what you don't measure. Just to move on. So this is a few questions here for you. I'm going to go through them very quickly. What is the current status in your DOT on MUTCD compliance for pavement markings? Are you still investigating it? Looking at the impact? Are you planning your approach to carry out pavement markings? Are you preparing contracts to purchase equipment? Or are you preparing contracts for outsourcing survey contracts? Or are you just already gathering the data and planning restriping already? I can see very quickly, yeah, okay. So it looks like nearly 50% of the respondents so far are very close to it, already gathering data and planning restriping contracts. There's a worrying 2% there that are what are they still investigating? 24% are investigating, and 22 are planning. I'm hoping those people are investigating and planning their approach. I hope they gain something from this today. So, now, there we go. Okay, sorry. The reasons, another reason for one of the final reasons for measuring retro, or to consider it is, it's a very big help for agencies to actually see what's happening to their road markings and their raised pavement markers. Are they using the right materials? Is it paint? Is it the thermo? Or what kind of RPMs, recessed markings or recessed RPMs? Do they work? How do they perform? You'll only know this if you do annual surveys, and you can pick up very quickly what works on what roads and what lines. And then the other thing we came across with road authorities is, well, Joe, we get loads of this information, but what do we do with it? How can we use it? So we came up with a platform, and in fact, Rob mentioned they have their own platform as well for bringing the data across. And this is what you need. You need to be able to see all that information visually to make it easy for decisions to be made. So we've developed a technology software platform called QuickView Pro, and that brings all your survey results available. And you can get them individually as well in CSV, KML, PDF, shape, and video. But we bring them together, we marry them together into QuickView Pro, and I'll show you a bit more about that in a second. But what you've got in that information is you've got a report line for every asset you collect, up to 7 assets. So double line would be 2, and you can collect all that information and look at it individually. You can visualize all your routes based on your pass and fail thresholds, and you can change them. Whoops, don't know what happened there, right? Something changed.
Do you want to go back?
Yeah, something, I don't know, pass on it, moving and so on. And sorry, you can change your own thresholds and using your own thresholds, set them up, and you can have different thresholds for interstate, rural roads, for new installations, year-old installations, and for the MUTCD as well. And also it helps you with data-driven decisions for pavement marking replacement. You're not just relying on visual assessment, you have the facts. And that information can also be brought across into your own GIS systems, linear reference systems, and your milepost references. So I'll just move on to the next one. I hope I'm on time for you, Ray. Okay, so this is the information you can actually get, and this is what you see with the camera. The camera's on permanently, it picks up all the markings, and you've got visual images, and that's what it sees. Whoops, keeps moving, Ray. I don't know what's going on. Can you bring it back?
Yeah, you're just clicking.
I don't know why it keeps moving.
There we go.
Okay, so you're getting all your long lines to the left and your right, and any critical safety in markings in the middle of the lane as well. Crosswalks, stop lines, things like that you'll pick up. And also you'll record raised pavement markers. Are they working? Are they not working? Whether they're recessed or on the surface. So we'll have a go again, moving this on, Ray. Okay, so this is what you pick up. So our technology doesn't use lasers, it uses LEDs, projectors, and a projector light 12 meters in front of the vehicle that's 16 feet wide. And it picks everything up in that beam. And it picks up your long lines, either side of the lane you travel, and any in-lane markings, plus your RPMs, and counts them. So basically 7 road assets at the same time in one pass. And everything is done automatically. The only thing the driver has to do is press start and press end. Now they can put in comments if they want during the journey, but this system is designed for one person in the vehicle. So you'll get your retroreflectivity of edge line, center line, in-lane markings, critical markings. You also get the day contrast, which is what's needed for ADS systems to operate during the day. They use retro at nighttime to see where the lines are. Also, your RPMs, are they working? How many are working? You get your line width. And what's important is you get material width, but you can also get your bead width. If you order 6-inch lines, do you want 6-inch beads? Well, here's a way to find out whether you get 4 inches, 5 inch, or 6-inch. The line color, white or yellow, again, all automatically detected. And the same with the skip or continuous type lines. And if they're double lines, what combination are they? Are they skip or are they continuous? All this is done automatically. The algorithms do the work, you just do the driving. And everything has identified start and end coordinates. And this is important for double overtaking lines, knowing where they are and knowing if they work and if they're compliant. Everything is GPS tagged, time-stamped with map and video. And the results are all formatted, as I've mentioned, in different formats, which are available individually. So this is the QuickView Pro. This is what you would see on this software on your laptop. You download your surveys, and as your surveys come in, you can be uploaded onto your server or your virtual machine, or we can do that for you, and your engineers can get access to that data at any time. So you get a list of your surveys. They're updated as you do them. You click on a survey. It will load it instantly on the map to show you from start to finish based on your pass and fail thresholds. And you can see instantly where the issues are. And on the right, you've got a little summary of everything that's going on. And you've a bar chart there that shows you a little bar chart for each asset that you've been collecting, that you've collected data on. And you can see there's a little bit of red there. You want to see where is that red on the bar chart? Where is it on the road? And what you do down here on the little drop down menu, you can pick whichever one of those you want. And when you choose it, it loads that survey instantly. and gives you in a straight line, like a DNA strip from start to finish. And it also loads it on your map as well. And you can see what's going on there. And you know there's something not right here. Everything is a bit of red there. What you can do is pick out the start and end coordinates for there and actually survey, process that, or send that information to your engineers or to your stripers to fix it. So a pretty comprehensive, very easy to use system. And we're quite proud of that because it does work. It's quite similar to what Rob has in with demonstrate their information for their loggers. Again, historical comparisons. This is really important. If every year you do a survey, you can very quickly see where your roads are deteriorating and maybe why. They could be on bends, they could be on, particular overtaken areas. But you can see this is a survey done for 3 years in a row, the same road. These are 100-meter sections. And you can see the roads are up and down. And you can see in 2019, they replaced those markings. The other thing you can do is you can actually go into these spots, and check them with the video to see what is happening. Is it wet? The road's wet, or were they dirty, or from roadworks or whatever? So very, very important. And you just drive that information across from your CSV files. We're actually looking at this as being able to generate this information as well automatically. So here's another question for you. I'm sorry about this. I know we're probably a little bit behind time, but if you could answer them, we really appreciate it. What is your primary concern in achieving compliance by the 2026 deadline? Is it you don't feel you have enough time to get the data, you don't have enough survey equipment to undertake the task, or don't have the human resources, the people to run the volume of surveys, or you don't have the financial resources to run the volume of surveys required, or others? Okay, I can see others coming in here quick. Okay, don't have the human resources. Okay, well, that is actually fascinating, because the good thing about these technologies is, I think with Rob's technology, you don't need extra people to use them. And with our technology, your existing people can very easily use our technology because it's not difficult to use and it's not labor intensive. And your results are available very quickly after you do the survey. So thank you. I really appreciate you. That's good information for us. New developments for the future. Again, from doing our talking to DOTs, and we're speaking to a lot of DOTs. I think we probably talked to about 35–40% of DOTs at this stage. And what we found out, there's a few things that bother them. They're worried about the paint coverage. How much paint and bead coverage have they on their markings? And we're looking at a way of classifying that and grading it. Also, on the center marking, the critical in-lane markings, we can detect they're there, but we can show you a picture. But at the moment, we can't tell you what it is. Is it a crosswalk? Is it an arrow? Or is it number or legends? But we're working on it. And the other thing that we got asked an awful lot about was, Joe, is there a way for us to actually calculate how much material we need to use on that section of road that failed? And we're building a calculator that will allow engineers input the material type, the line width, the line color, and the price they expect to pay per square meter or mile. And again, we're open to suggestions on that, but we're building that calculator at the moment, and we hope to have that available middle of next year. We think that's going to be a pretty good tool, and it ties in also, of course, what Rob does as well. So dynamic wet, I put this slide in because I get asked about this all the time. Our technology will measure wet retro with the ASTM standards, but it must be done in a controlled environment. And what I mean by that is you can't have rain and you can't have spray. So you can do it if there's no spray. It's possible to do it at traffic speed in a controlled environments. Now we have had a test done, and we're within about 5% of a handheld, which I think is pretty impressive. And that was done by an independent tester. So damp markings and dew markings, yes, you can measure retro, but you're going to get low numbers. And you can't do it in fog, and you can't do it in raining, because the rain and the fog will block the sensors, so you won't get a reading on them. So another thing to consider for agencies, two things here. If you have your own profiling van for doing pavement condition testing, such as friction or road geometrics or pavement analysis, there is a chance you could fit our technology to the front of your vehicle while you're doing those surveys and collect the retro at the same time. Huge cost savings and benefits there. Now, I think when you're doing that, you will need 2 people in the van, in fairness. Also, your providers, and I know a lot of DOTs have outside contractors who do this work for them. And it's very possible for them to fit our technology to their vehicles as well. And we are already talking to some of these profiling people about this. And some of them have embraced it and are already fitting our equipment to their survey equipment. So they can offer this as a service to you when you're sending out your bid contracts for resurveying, surveying. They can add this to those contracts. So anyway, that is it, folks. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate you. I've only lost about 10% of the people listening since the start, but thank you very much, and I really appreciate it. I think Paul is going to kind of conclude the meeting now at this stage.
Yep.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Joe, appreciate it. I know we're running a little behind schedule, everybody. And so what I'd encourage you to do is please type in your questions to the chat box. If we don't have time to answer them, we will provide responses to all the questions and send those responses out to those that have registered and joined the meeting. But in conclusion, I wish I would have had one more polling question, but hopefully you're familiar with the movie called Moneyball. It's a baseball movie with Brad Pitt, where he is Billy Beane of the Oakland A's. Hopefully this rings a bell for a lot of you. So the Oakland A's just came off of a great season, and he's got all his scouts around the table trying to figure out how to plug the holes. And these guys are full of wisdom. They've been around baseball, each of them for 40 or 50 years, and combined, he's got 250 years of experience sitting around the table, providing qualitative input into who they should be picking up to replace some of the holes so they can have another championship team. And Brad Pitt or Billy Beane decides, you know what, we cannot manage this baseball team without having metrics and measuring performance. And he comes across this kid who has a lot of statistics that he's picked up in his studies. He's applying them to baseball. He really, Brad Pitt develops a sweet spot for this kid. He brings him on, changes the way they recruit people, changes the way they play people in baseball, and they end up with another winning season on a very low budget team. I think this is very similar. I think traditionally we have not spent enough time thinking about managing pavement markings, and with the FHWA requirement coming into play in a couple of years, and all of this technology now available, I think every agency has a wonderful opportunity to do more with less. And I think that's part of the key here. Not just DOTs, but everybody is having labor issues right now. And there's no sign that that's going to stop. Really, ever since COVID hit, mindsets and philosophies are changing. This type of business is just not sexy. Particularly, a lot of it has to be done at night, out in the field. So bringing technology in to fill some of these holes and start measuring so that you can manage pavement markings is really what this webinar has been all about. I hope you've learned some things through the webinar, and I'm not going to read each one of these bullets. I'm assuming you're reading them as you go. What I would like to do, though, is we have talked about having a follow-up webinar to this, and we would be willing to do that if you guys thought that you'd like to dig deeper into certain topics, whether it's topics we went over today or topics we didn't have time to do, but we are interested in knowing whether or not you'd like for us to dig deeper in any of these topics or bring some new topics to the table. And you can do that in the chat box if you'd like. We'll pick it up as we record this. But with that, I do think we're out of time. I don't know if we'll have the opportunity to do any Q&A. Ray, I'm going to leave that to you.
There is
but
a question. There is a question which perhaps you
Hey.
will be able to give us an answer on. How do you capture and categorize intersections such as crosswalks? This is not a priority in MUTCD as it only requires longitudinal markings.
That right now the MUTCD doesn't require it. I know Caltrans, California DOT, just is either just now implementing or has already implemented some crosswalk performance metrics regarding retro. So I do expect crosswalks to becoming more and more important, particularly all markings involving vulnerable road users, because if you look at the crash data in the US anyway, that's where we continuously see increases in severe injury and fatal crashes. And the current administration is making it a priority. I wouldn't be surprised if crosswalks are elevated, bike lanes are elevated, and other types of treatments for vulnerable road users elevated to a status where we do have to think about how we can better maintain those.
Hey, Paul, can you hear me? This is Matt Springer.
Hey, Matt, I can hear you just fine.
Good. I just wanted to speak up real quick since you mentioned us at North Carolina DOT at the beginning. Anytime, and this is a comment more than a question, but if you need to share my information with others, if they want to know how we've collected data over the years, and I believe we've been doing it closer to 15. I know you mentioned 10 to 15, but I've been with DOT 11 years, and I know we were doing it before I was there. That
Yep.
was one thing. So anybody out there, anybody on here can have my email or phone number, whatever. The other thing I want to put, just to give maybe a hair of, and I'm not picking on any numbers, but a hair of perspective to the 50 millicandela retro number. I took our handheld retroreflectometer out of the office one day and read the sidewalk, so just the concrete sidewalk, and I got 25.
Yep.
So I know that's another discussion for another time, but that kind of puts you in perspective with that 50. So anyway, totally agree with your closeout here a couple of minutes ago too. Anyway, like I said, share all my information if needed. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Good,
Thank you,
good
Matt.
conversation past hour.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you joining us today. Ray, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up with that. We'll obviously send out a copy of the recording and the presentation slides. And if you would like to get back to us and let us know any particular webinar topics that you would like us to cover in future, we'd be more than happy to accommodate that. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again. Any of the presenters who've been present today are more than happy to take questions directly through their email address or through their website. So please feel free to contact them. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Take care. Mind
Thank you.
yourself. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.